Something very interesting is going on here at the Yalukit Willam Nature Reserve. We're about 2.5 years into the restoration of this little pocket of it up at the chain of ponds, and unprecedented numbers of starlings have moved in, probably in response to the ephemeral edges of the water bodies, giving them access to plenty of damp ground to probe. You can see there's quite a few starlings flying around, and they have had an unexpected positive effect on the rest of the bird diversity, would you believe? Well, this is the interpretation that I'm offering anyway. Make of it what you will, but they are frequent targets of noisy miner aggression. You see it many times a day, because they're a fairly small bird, almost as small as a noisy miner. They forage out in the open, they do a lot of perching out in the open, and the noisy miners are constantly hounding them. But there are so many of them, and they've got this flocking behaviour that means they're quite a difficult target to sort of move on. So the noisy miners, which used to have a stranglehold on this place with almost no other birds their size or smaller, have now got their hands full, and they're spending a lot of their time chasing things, which means they can't focus all their energies on smaller birds that now find themselves in here. And this willy wagtail is now just about what you could call resident here, which is really exciting. The first small bush bird back in the project, and you often see it near the starlings. Not always, but even when the starlings are elsewhere in the reserve, they're still diverting the noisy miner's attention. Now, I saw this willy wagtail get chased all the way out of the reserve 2 days ago, but the pressure is not as persistent as it once was in here. Willy wagtails last bred in here in 2014, when noisy miners weren't quite as dominant over the space. Back then there were also white-plumed honeyeaters still in Elstonwick Park South. That was the last year that occurred. But the other thing going on is there's now so many more food resources for things like willy wagtails as an incentive to keep coming back, and as an offset for the energy lost with all of that pursuit by the noisy miners. They're always doing the maths, these birds. They've got to uphold their extremely fast metabolism. If they're using more energy running around away from the noisy miners than they are gaining from the space, then they're going to have to move, or else they'll die. But now we have a situation where, as far as the noisy miners are concerned, the dominoes are kind of falling out of their favour. There's more food resources to justify persistence and immigration by these small birds, and there are now more targets to diffuse all of that energy spent by the noisy miners. So I think we're seeing a consistent shift in the direction we want to see, and this is the first solid sign of that. But as well as that, today there is a yellow-faced honeyeater in here, which is the first record of that species in here. It's found by Archer Callaway. I think it's the 127th bird species recorded in here, and it has been chased several times by the noisy miners, and unsurprisingly it's been funneled up into the chain of ponds area by that noisy miner aggression. They've still got a really strong stranglehold on the southern part of the reserve, but this is not quite as easy for them to defend anymore. The other thing is that there's less resource incentives for the noisy miners up here, because they've lost all of that lawn. They really don't get a lot of use out of the kind of vegetation that we've replaced it with. They've still got the eucalypts, of course, and they're still here, but it's getting a little bit harder for them and a little bit easier for just about everything else.